Welcome to Signal Paths. I'm Doug.
And I'm Ryan.
And we're audio nerds.
Right on.
And we're going to talk about our journey in high-end audio and how we got started and where we're at today and, you know, the kind of things we want to share with you all.
Yeah, and there's probably some similarities in our journey, but there's also probably some big differences in our journey. I think one commonality with high-end audio is somehow you got introduced to it, usually by somebody that was already into it. So who got you into this?
My father did. My dad, you know, he ran a printing department as his main job, but his side trade was fixing TVs and stereo equipment.
Okay.
So he replaced tubes in old tube TVs and stuff like that, and replaced. He has and stuff. I still have a RCA tube tester at home when he worked in that.
Right.
And I was one day I would pay attention and kind of hang out with him when he did that kind of stuff. And one day he had some, you know, he had his system set up and he was playing some music, and I just got intrigued. I'm like, how does this all work? You know, how does a woofer work? How does, you know, why is one speaker built bigger than another in the same cabinet? He started explaining it to me, and it for some reason, out of every other thing that I've asked him in my life, that conversation just, it came easy to me.
Right.
I absorbed it and took it and ran with it. And while all the other kids were out playing flag football, I was reading Stereophile magazine and reading reviews. So, and that's how it got started. And I went through my world of you know, affordable high-end, you know, affordable audio that all I could afford as a kid. Then I went into the car audio thing, and then I went back to home audio and kind of where I'm at today.
And you probably had that boom system in your car, right?
It was
shook the neighbor's house a little bit?
A little bit. It was 112 and a lot of power.
Okay.
It wasn't like, you know, the 1812s that are, you know, in a Astro minivan that you've seen in the 90s. It wasn't that.
And I remember that on car audio and electronics. That Astro van was amazing.
Yeah,
so,
and it was cool.
Yeah.
I didn't have the money for that, and honestly, I was in more for punch and clean,
right,
than I was for ultimate head shake, because the music I listened to for the majority was, you know, alternative rock and old 70s rock, and I wasn't a limited genre person,
right.
So the 1612s or whatever, you know, that didn't really appeal to me because most of the music I listened to wouldn't benefit.
Call for that.
No.
Right. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So I was same thing. My dad introduced me to audio. He had the vintage 1970s Pioneer system, and it was a great sounding system. You know, I really loved watching the VU meters. I thought that was really cool when I was a little kid. Had it on his tape deck, and I loved watching Dad put a piece of vinyl on the turntable and watching the turntable work. I thought that was so amazing. The little orange light, you remember, on the Technics turntables, you know, so that you could dial in the speed and all that kind of stuff. I love that stuff. But more than anything, my dad introduced me to great music, and I listened and listened and listened to music, and I loved it. My dad was a classical guitarist, and so not only did I get to listen to great music on his system, I got to sit and watch him play classical guitar, and that was really cool too. And I love that, and it turned me into a musician.
Right.
So I ended up, part of my journey with audio is really, I spent several years as a music educator. I was a band director for 16 years, and that was a really fun thing. But I would guess that if you talk to almost anybody I worked with as a band director, they would tell you my obsession was tone production and sound, like meaning characteristic tone, and what do those things sound like. And so that really influenced my audio journey. I didn't go into audio for the technical stuff. I went into audio because I was so deeply into sound reproduction, and I wanted that. And so high-end audio is definitely the place to go for that. And I remember, you know, luxury audio was also part of that journey as well. You know, my dad took me to a shop where I got introduced to Bang & Olufsen. Remember Bang & Olufsen? You just barely touch stuff, and CD drawers move, and the volume goes up, even though there's not a button there. You know, it's just a flat surface. So I was really it was eye candy, you know. It was just, and it sounded really good too. Bang & Olufsen was just one of the better things I ever heard at that point. But I remember it probably wasn't until I was 6th or 7th grade that my dad took the covers off of the speakers, and I saw, oh wow, there's a big 15-inch woofer in there. I didn't know. I had no idea what was behind that screen. In fact, I didn't even know the screen came off. You know, but I see this big 15-inch woofer. I see a horn tweeter. I see a couple of mid-range drivers. You know, that was a cool speaker, and that kind of started getting me curious about things. But alas, I went into teaching and tried to afford high-end audio on a teacher's salary. It's not so easy. If you're young and single, yeah, you can get some of this stuff. But if you're not, or if you're dual income, no kids, yeah, you can do that too. But if you're not, or you got kids, you're married, single income, whatever, it's difficult. And so that was the big challenge with that.
Yeah, it's hard to buy a pair of speakers and when you have a kid that wants to play football or something.
Right.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah,
I mean,
yeah.
it's
Your
hard to
priorities.
juggle.
Yeah.
And it's hard to get a wife to understand, hey, I want to pay $5,000 for a pair of speakers.
Yeah.
And then they're like, yeah, but we need to do this. You know,
Yeah.
I get it.
Yeah.
I'm similar. I got into the musicianship thing. I'm a guitar player, bass player. You know, I sing, and I played in a few bands, and that helped me a lot discover instrument tone and true instrument sound.
Yeah.
The best thing I can tell somebody that's getting into audio is learn what true instruments sound like, because that will give you the ear. You know, everybody wants to know, how do I get the audiophile ear? How do I get that ear to tell what things are supposed to sound like?
Live music.
Live music.
Yeah.
Listen to what an instrument really sounds like, and that's the best thing you can do.
Yeah, absolutely. And if a speaker can't reproduce that sound for you well, then you got a problem.
Right.
I remember listening to pretty good audio equipment and hearing Jay Beckenstein with Spyro Gyra. As a saxophonist, I loved his sound. And I was listening to it on good audio equipment, but it wasn't hi-fi. It wasn't ultra hi-fi. You know, it was just good equipment. The first time I heard Jay Beckenstein on a great system, I was just like, what? There's so much more dimension to his sound than I've ever heard. And so that was really cool. And it would have probably changed how I approached developing my own sound if I would have heard a better presentation. You know?
A lot of people that hear jazz or hear any of the instrumental musics, they hear it through a Bluetooth headphone or
Right.
a rack system.
Yeah.
They're like, why do people listen to this? It just sounds like a whole bunch of people playing scales. And they don't understand. You hear it on a system that has a depth of stage and imaging, those instruments come alive in the room.
Yeah.
And it changes your whole outlook on what that music is capable of.
And that's not just true of jazz.
No, it's
That's
true of
true of all music.
Yeah.
You know, there's stuff I listen to on a hi-fi system that's like, I would not listen to that in my cheap car. You know, but I'll listen to it in here because it's so much more interesting to me. And so, yeah. Now you do speaker design.
Yep.
And you also write for as a reviewer for a lot of not a lot of outlets,
couple,
but
yeah.
you've written a lot for those.
Right.
couple
I
of
was a
outlets.
writer for Audio Advice for a few years, and then they've since went all in-house, so I don't do that anymore, but I enjoyed my time doing it. And then thesoundadvocate.com, I write for them, and I've done quite a bit of reviewing for them over the last probably 8 years.
So how has that affected you as an audiophile? You know, you're getting to hear a lot of stuff that other people don't get to listen to regularly.
Yeah, that's the key. I when you get to put your ears on a lot of different equipment, you really get a good grip on what different technologies bring to the table, what different amplifier topologies bring to the table, what different types of speakers bring to the table, what some of these designers, the choices they make as far as especially speakers, why they make them, what they can produce, and it just makes you a more well-rounded listener because you've heard a lot.
You've heard a lot.
Yeah.
And one of the things I like about talking to you is I don't hear the same stuff that I hear talking to the average audiophile, because I get a lot more detailed information from you and different descriptions. You know, a lot of times you hear audiophiles kind of saying the same words about vastly different systems.
Yeah.
and you're just like, why do we keep describing these in the same way? But when I talk to you, I hear you say other things. I'm like, I never thought of it that way. And so that's one of the reasons I really enjoy visiting with you about audiophile stuff, and it's great. Now, also as a speaker designer, let's give. I know you can like go crazy on this, especially when you're in the design process.
I can dork out on it.
So let's get the 50-cent version of, well, maybe dime, because I know what you're like. Mm-hmm. But let's get the dime version of how has that affected you as an audiophile.
Dipping into speaker design has allowed me to learn a lot about the intricacies of making what appears to be not a musical instrument produce music. And and I, through my time, I played with the small box speaker thing. I did a whole bunch of other, designs in my head and learning. And then I came to open baffle speakers, and I'm like, okay, it's a type of a speaker design. You have to work around some limitations, but once you work around those, they can produce some of the best, most musical sound out there. And it's because of a certain factors. It has to do with the loading of the drivers and the way they work. And it's sometimes hard to get people to understand open baffles because they're like, oh, there's no box on the back of your speakers. Yeah. That's by design.
Yeah.
And that's been my open baffle speakers has been my thing for the last probably 15 years now, since I bought my first pair.
Well, I have to say, I've heard open baffles at shows, and I was really down on open baffles, and then I hear Doug's system, and I'm like, okay, maybe I need to rethink this because this is a very different image, and I don't want to downgrade what those other manufacturers are doing, because they're showing up at a room that they have like an hour or two to set up the night before and hopefully get something that's presentable at a show in a hotel room, and so I don't want to like go, oh well, all those other ones are bad, but I will say when I sit in a room that's properly set up and you've designed the speaker, I go, wow.
It shows, especially with open baffle speakers, it's hard to get a hotel room to sound good with those. Any speaker, I've heard some of the best built speakers out there in a room that's just not right for them.
Yeah.
And the thing is, everybody's like, open baffles, that's just one take. Exactly. Box speakers can be good too. You just got to do a lot more with the enclosure and a lot more with the design to get them to behave. Yeah. And not resonate and not do the things that boxes can do. Yeah. I'm not against any type of speaker design. It's more like, because every design's got good and bad. Every design. There's not a perfect out there. You just got to roll with the punches on the design you choose and try to make it as good as you can.
Yeah, and you've certainly done a great job with your work. So anyway, so I think we've got a pretty good amount of information here, and I probably don't want to go too much longer on this, but we've got a lot of ideas for episodes coming up, and we just wanted to make sure that as an audience you guys understood a little bit about how we're coming at this, and I think we've got some pretty cool ideas for shows coming up.
Yeah, I think we want to, in my opinion, I think we need to talk about components, talk about brands, possibly, especially the brands that you have in the shop here, and then also be somewhat of an educator as well on audio.
Yeah, and really, what you're going to find with us is you're not going to hear a lot of bashing on brands, because there's a lot of great brands out there. As a shop owner, I have to make decisions about what brands I'm going to have in my store, and I choose as a musician. My brands always have to reflect what does live sound do, and at this budget, what can I choose for this shop that's going to get as close to that as possible. And so that's one of my obsessions, is being able to do that. But anyway, we're looking forward to more episodes and seeing you guys in the future here on Signal Paths.
Yeah, thank you.